Good day, podcast community. PeteKane here, Podcast Pete and lifestyle coach. And we have a special guest on the show today. We're going to geek out a little bit about Jenny's story and mindset and all the things that she is working with. And Jenny, for those that don't know you, tell our viewers who you are, what you do, and who you serve. And then we'll get into our podcast.
Okay, I love it. So excited to be here with you today, Pete. Thank you for having me. So, as you said, I am Jenny Jonte. So, I would call myself actually an identity expansion and nervous system coach. Formerly, I would have used the title purely just mindset, but it has evolved through the years. So, now I'm excited to kind of just step into this new transitional phase of the business. But I work with people who, they feel capable but stuck, where their goals and their visions have outgrown their self-image, their identity. And so we work to recalibrate the identity, the nervous system, so that now these patterns change and they can actually receive the money, the success, the ease, the lifestyle that they've been trying to work towards all that time.
Ooh, I love that. I heard somebody say, well, we have between 12 and 60,000 thoughts that go through our head every day. And we make 500 decisions. So when you talk about overload, and we have it out there, how is the nervous system and the mind, how do they kind of work together to minimize things like that?
Yeah. And here's the bottom line is that our nervous system is not wired for like growth and expansion, right? It's wired to keep us safe and it's wired for familiar. So if we have these patterns that we've lived through all of our life and that we've developed over many years, then it wants to say, okay, well, this is our kind of baseline. This is where we operate from. So when you try to expand and grow, and if you try to do that too quickly, where you haven't then allowed your nervous system the time to catch up and expand with you so it can actually receive and sustain these new levels, then it will just want to retreat. And so these are where you get the self-sabotage patterns and all these different things can come into place to bring you back to where we think it's safe, right? Because that's its job. And so what can happen is it might show up as maybe the thoughts that you're thinking. You start thinking, oh, this isn't meant for me, or if like something doesn't work quite right, or it might feel hard or too uncomfortable or too, whatever it might be. So these different thoughts start to come into play because that's your body's reaction to what you're trying to do and accomplish. So they really like work interchanged with each other. But when you go back and you actually start reprogramming things at that deeper level, looking at the identity, the nervous system, all of those pieces, then it's amazing how the thoughts start to shift and change automatically without you having to be, I call it like the thought police, and trying to monitor all of those thousands and thousands and thousands of thoughts that we have every single day, which can be exhausting, right? So this way you just naturally start to think from a different place. So it actually works out really beautifully. It's a lot more ease, and it doesn't feel quite so hard and forceful.
Ooh, that is so beautiful. This was probably 10, 20 years ago. I'd heard something, whether it was right or not, I don't know, but they said, hey, we only use like 5% of our brain. And I was going, 5%? What? That's 95% that we don't use.
Dormant.
Yeah, I was like mystified. And then when I had the stroke and I'd ask them like, hey, like, how long am I going to will I be able to do this? I was a golfer before. And they would say, we don't know. And I said, well, come on, just give me an idea. And they said, every brain injury is different. But my point is, have we progressed in the last few years or 5 years to knowing more about how the brain works and how the nervous system works? Is there been some advancements from your perspective?
I really feel that there have. I mean, even in the case that the number I always hear is 10% of our brain. So I guess if that's then we are advancing there.
We've
But I
got
really
capacity. Um,
But I think, especially I would say in the last 10 years, we're becoming so much more aware of how our lifestyle and how technology and this constant simulation is altering things. So we are put into that state of fight or flight the majority of the time because we're in this constant state of what is coming at me? What do I need to filter? What do I need to, you know, adjust to? Where do I have to run? Like, what is going on? So this lifestyle that we're leading, I think we have become a lot more aware that it is not sustainable, and then now we're developing all these other different issues along the way as well. And we're always learning more about the brain itself because I think it was in the 90s when they even figured out neuroplasticity. And before that, they thought, oh, like, it is what it is, and you can't do anything about it. And now with it's such a relief, I think, to know that nothing is set in stone and that we have a malleable brain so we can create these new pathways, which I'm sure you're very familiar with having to go through that rehab process and
mhm.
understanding like how much harder it is to do that, but that it's possible, right? So I think that is in and of itself has been a really huge advancement as well. And then just understanding and becoming more aware of the signs and symbols that our bodies give us. And hopefully we actually acknowledge that and do something about it, right? So that we don't just try to continue to push through and just ignore what our body is trying to tell us, but finding this balance and the energies that we use and how we're displaying them and all of that. So there's so much I feel like that's coming to the surface that people are becoming more and more consciously aware of and actually putting into practice, which is the other piece of that, right? Like we can know something, but are we doing something physically about it? Are we actually changing our behavior? Are we implementing all of these things that we know and that maybe we should, but we don't actually do anything, right? So I think even when you look at how much more mindfulness has grown in general, and it's a very general term, but at least it's making people aware and it's becoming a lot more accepted as well. So I do think we're making some really good progress.
That is so good. I before it was 4 years ago that I
Mhm.
had a stroke, and I dyslexic, and so writing was never. I flunked English in high school, and so I was
Mhm.
later in summer school, and I was always in remedial reading. Didn't really like reading that much.
Mhm.
Certainly didn't like journaling, but I finished like over 17 journals. I speed read now, and
Wow.
this was the one thing that this is about a year ago. Watched a video about writing helps to rewire your brain.
Mm.
And we type a lot in school and stuff, but the actual physical writing,
Yes.
the brain learns differently, and I can
Mhm.
absolutely attest to it. My brother said to me about 6 months, he goes, "Pete, I think you're sharper after your stroke than you were before." And I said, "I do too, because my clarity's better, my thoughts are clearer.
Yeah.
I just have a better handle on things." When
Mhm.
it comes to consumption, I 6.5 hours, we watched 4 hours of TV and scrolled
Mm.
half hours of TikTok videos or something like that. So that's 6.5 hours of consumption.
Mm.
I believe we were born to create. How do you stay
Oh, I love that.
creative?
Oh, that's so beautiful. Actually, I would have always said that I wasn't very creative because I didn't think from like an artistic standpoint that I was. Like
Mhm,
in the sense I'm like, well, I couldn't draw a picture, right? I could color something that somebody else draws. So I assumed that this was just like, oh, I'm not creative.
mhm,
But in recent years, especially, I have tapped into understand that creativity means so many different things, right? I mean, just creating our life, creating our business, or creating whatever it is. And I'm like, now I love it because I've learned how to tap into, source, universe, God, whatever language you want to use, and understand more of the essence of who I truly am, and that we are always co-creating and always we have so much control over what we experience in this life. And so being able to actually understand like, oh, this is my vision, right? And then bringing that to life and seeing it unfold. And so I think just in general, my whole concept of what creativity even means has truly expanded quite a great deal.
Mm,
And understanding, oh, I actually am creative. It's just in a different way. Yeah, I still
yeah.
am not good at drawing per se, but I can create in other fashions. So, and I just have to say, to go back to your point about writing really quick, because I know my kids aren't going to listen to this, but we homeschool and they don't always want to write the things out. I'm like, no, but you have to write them as well, because you're going to remember it in a much different, deeper way, and it'll stick better. So I love that you re-emphasize that as well.
Yeah, it's like I get up in the morning, I drink water, so because of the hydration through the night. Then I
Mhm.
think, then I read, and then I start journaling.
Mhm.
What I learned the previous day, what our conversation would have been like, and what I discovered through a conversation like this, and then
Mhm.
what I'm excited about. And I tell you, it's just like I feel like if I don't, I miss something. Like I'm
Mhm.
so used to expressing myself that way that
Yeah.
it has given me, like you said, I wouldn't have said myself as being creative. If you said, "Are you creative?" This was 10 years ago, I would say, I don't know. I not really, because I defined it like you did. Like
Mhm.
think of artists, I think of people like musicians and different
Mhm.
things like that, but I don't think of it like I do now. What
Yeah.
when you were like, did you start out homeschooling, or did you all of a sudden discover that this is the route we wanted to go after trying it another way?
Sure. We did start in school. The kids both did like a private little preschool and kindergarten. Our daughter did. And then she went to a charter school for first grade. And like just all along the way, it was a, rigorous school. So
Mhm.
they said, so first grade, she was having hours of homework every night and all of this. And so I think it just my husband watching me basically having to reteach her everything that she did during the day. When she would come home and just the amount of time we were spending, and he just would keep saying, "Oh, you could just homeschool." And I was just like, "No, no, there's no way." And I, never thought the kids would ever listen to me, whatever. So towards the end of that year, he said it again when they were there, and they're like, "Oh, could we do that? What is that?" And I'm like, let's do some research before we just jump ship and start this. So, so I did like I always do. I did a deep dive. I talked to people that I knew that homeschooled. I started researching all this different stuff, and I was like, okay, I think we could actually do this. So we started the next year, and now this is our third year, I think. Let's see if she's in fourth grade now. Yeah. So our third year, and I could not imagine going back. I love it. We have a great process. I mean, they get to explore interests that they're in. I mean, we're doing 2
Mhm.
science courses for elementary this year, but they love it, right? So it's like, oh, it's just been such a blessing. So I couldn't imagine going back at this point.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that because my daughter, she homeschools, and
Mm,
so they're able to do so much more. They do a
yeah.
hybrid too. They go 2 days a week to
Mhm,
a for all homeschoolers, so they do get
mhm.
a chance to be in a
Yeah.
classroom a little bit and be around friends, but
Mhm.
they raise King St. Charles's, so they would be able to have that flexibility with the
Right.
girls, and just that, you know, I mentor over at the high school, and I called my daughter and I said, "Boy, I just can tell you, you're so blessed to be home."
Mm,
'Cause I'm with 25 sophomores, and
okay.
it's a completely different. I have a friend that in my Rotary Club that helps me now, but I had him for a year and a half by myself, and and I'm
Oh
telling
boy.
you, I kept telling him, "Give me somebody, please," because 25 sophomores and, oh, it was such a eye opener for me
It
because
is.
hadn't I haven't been that close to the school system in years.
Mhm.
Now, and then I got a chance to see it. What would you say, like, are you like with homeschooling now? It's changed
Mhm.
so fast. You got AI, you got so many different tools to
Mhm.
I was telling my daughter about Notebook LM to give them some
Uh-huh.
and because I took a sermon that her husband, my son-in-law and her husband, he did, and I put it through Notebook LM, and I gave him a great presentation, a podcast,
Mhm.
audio, I mean, it was great, and they were going, "This is fantastic." And so I was saying a lot of homeschoolers are starting to use it. Do you
Mhm.
use any tools in the last year that maybe you didn't in the first 2 years to help you?
Oh, not really yet, but now I'm gonna have to look into those. I think because they're still fairly young grades right now, so they're doing second and fourth grade. So we haven't gotten into too much of the technology side of things just yet. It's like they do keyboarding and basic stuff, so that they're familiar with utilizing a computer, but we haven't dove too much into that kind of stuff. So, but there are so many, there's almost too many opportunities now and different things that you can do. So, I mean, really the sky is the limit. And like you said, the flexibility is unmatched. So,
Mhm.
I mean, and they our kids also do an enrichment program that they go to as well. And then there's sports, right? So our daughter does 16 hours of gymnastics a week, but now she's not exhausted going there, right? She's not going from a full day of school being
Yes.
overstimulated all day to 4 hours of practice at night, right? So it just has worked out so beautifully for us. But now you're giving me even more ideas of programs and things to look into for them.
Yeah, I always I will test things, and I'm testing a scheduling system for my daughter just to
Oh.
see it, and, because she has 4 girls, and so,
Mm.
there's the different tasks throughout the day, and it's keeping track of all that, and can you use tools that stimulate their interest? And so
Mhm.
I've been using this calendar system, and so I'm still testing it, but I like to test things and then share them after that.
Yeah.
What would you say with your clients? When you say getting stuck,
Mm.
what is that? What's that mean for the person out there that hears that word, but they don't really know much more than that? What do you mean when and I want you to, if you could, tie it to the nervous system because that's
Mhm.
really unique, and I would love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yeah. So I think of people who seem to be in this pattern, right? Like maybe they'll have a little bit of growth or success and then they come back or they go, they just can't quite get past a certain level. So it
Mhm.
could be, for example, if they own a business and they try different strategies and it's like, okay, well, I did this other strategy and I got here, but it then, it came right back or it just couldn't get past. It's like like there's this ceiling, that invisible ceiling. It could be, I don't know, 100K a year or whatever it is. So there's this place that they just can't seem to grow past. And
Mhm.
so it could be, maybe they've tried doing mindset or manifestation work, or they've worked with somebody in the past or a business coach or whatever, but still it's like it just keeps coming up, this pattern. So the frustration might be coming, the overwhelm or the burnout. It's like no matter what I try, I can't seem to grow to the point where it's like I know that I'm capable. I can feel it. It's like I'm on the verge. I know that it's coming, but I just can't seem to get there. So this is that pattern that people seem to be in. And that is exactly where, if they haven't gone back and looked at some of these other key areas like the nervous system, then that is going to keep you there, right? So it's really amazing. And it's not necessarily, you could use the terminology like fear of success, or, a lot of people that I work with are really big givers, right? So the ability to receive is
Mhm.
actually harder than you would think it would be, right? So
Right, right.
those are all these caps that we unknowingly put on ourselves. And it's really interesting what happens when you become attuned and you start listening to your body when, you're about to reach a new level of success, which of course comes with responsibility. It comes with, more visibility. So all of these different things that it comes with that we might not necessarily think about at first. And it's like, okay, well, how do we feel when suddenly we're a lot more visible and all these people, all these eyes are on us? And then, which is going to come with, oh, are they judging me? Are they, all of these different things
Mhm.
that come up that when we're first thinking like, oh, we want this really high level of success, but we don't think about all those pieces that come up with it. So now as they start to come up and then our system's like, oh, wait, I'm not sure if I want all of that visibility or, oh, that responsibility of having employees or that, I don't know that I can actually accept that much, new income and I might feel guilty for it or whatever else it might be. So this is where our nervous system will start to pull us back without our even conscious awareness that it's doing it because we don't quite feel safe in this higher level of capacity yet.
Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes, it does. How do you challenge yourself, but yet stay content on what, stay, not stay, oh, I'm thinking, I've just dropped a word here. It's how do you challenge yourself on a regular basis?
I mean, for me, I think I've always been a little bit on the driven side, and I'm kind of like a black sheep in my family. I'm never content with just settling, right? So I was the first person to go to like university and then went on to get a doctorate in physical therapy before transitioning into this work. So I've always just been a little bit more driven anyways,
Mhm.
but um finding the right path, I think, was probably the more challenging part. And then as you do that, it's like, then it doesn't feel like you're challenging yourself because you just love it so much. So
Mhm.
whenever somebody would say, "You find what you do and you feels like you never work," I always thought that was a bunch of hogwash because I was like, it always feels like work. Until I started coaching. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel like work. This just feels like I'm having fun every day. And like meeting people that are beautiful, and I love this. I'm like, "Oh, okay, now I finally get it." Like, although I enjoyed being a physical therapist,
Mhm.
it was still work. Like, I was exhausted. I was, just overwhelmed. It was a lot, right? And so, it was because it wasn't actually aligned with me, but I didn't know that, right?
Mhm.
So, as I challenge myself to I think the biggest part is stepping outside of my comfort zone into doing things that I would have never done before. Like previously, the idea of making a video, for example, and like as we're doing right now, right? Like we have video, and now I put myself on all over the place and I don't even hesitate anymore. But when I first started, it was like, ooh, can I do this? Right? Can I put a video of myself on the internet? And when you step back and then you take other people off of the pedestal and you realize that we're all actually just one,
Yeah.
then it takes away a lot of that fear. And so now I'm like, okay, I can do this. And then the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. So I
Yeah.
think if anytime I'm stepping into something that's new and different. So even actually currently I'm in the process of a big transition of the business. So this is just beautiful timing.
Mhm.
Um, and even stepping into that, there's still moments where I'm like, "Ooh, this is a little bit different than like the conformed norm of like just basic mindset coach," right? So I'm like, "Am I doing the right thing?" And I'm like, "But no." The more I do, the more I get into it. I'm like, "No, this is the direction. This is where we need to go." And then I just learn to trust myself, right?
Mm.
And so listen to that intuition and not needing to be one of the herd, but it's okay to be different. And actually, I think it's better to be different and individual and your approach and how you do things.
Yeah, I agree with you. I had a gentleman on, and we were talking about, I don't know how it came up, but we were talking about PTSD.
Mm,
So grew up at age 5, he was in a concentration camp in Russia.
mm,
So not your typical 5-year-old pre-K
mhm,
environment, but what he said is he took the D, dropped the D, and put G for post-traumatic stress growth.
Wow.
We grow through our trauma, or we can
Mm.
be better. Have you had a time in your life where trauma knocked you on the side of the head, and then you found out afterwards that you grew and that it was beneficial to your growth that you could share with us?
I could, yeah, without sharing too much personal detail, but yes, there's been a couple, but one general period of my life that absolutely it hit a point that I never thought that I would, right? And I went to, if people use the term rock bottom, it's just like the most complete overwhelm of my system that I've ever experienced.
Mhm.
And so many different things happening. And but once I started to come out of it, it wasn't like oh, I would love to live that again. But it
Yeah.
was like, I can see why that had to happen. And I can see now how completely different I am from before that experience. And I do see that it was beneficial.
Mhm.
Sometimes I'm a hard learner, like I don't get it right away. So it's like, okay, let me just like make sure that you get this. And so I have to learn the hard way. And I think especially in a couple of these circumstances, that is what was happening there. And so I'm grateful for it, but again, not like, oh, I would love to do this again. No, but I do see how it was beneficial in that turn. Like, wow. I mean, just the way that he changed the way that you think about that to post cement, but how did he say it again?
Post-traumatic stress
Post traumatic stress
for
growth. Wow.
growth. Yeah.
Like, think of how if everybody could think of it that way
Yeah.
instead, how different their experience would be with it and how they come out of it, because that's such a huge piece, right? Like, the idea is to learn from our past rather than be a victim of our past or be stuck in our past. And I think so many people are in that place. And it is can be easier said than done for a lot of people. That can be a very challenging thing to move through. And you have to want to, right? And some people would rather stay with that category and stay in that place. So I just think that's an unbelievable story. And that reminded me of the gentleman, and now, of course, his name eludes me, but oh, he wrote some really great books, but he had been in a concentration camp during World War II. Are you
Mhm.
familiar with that story? And I can't think of his name now, but it was a similar situation. He realized that the one freedom he had that they couldn't take away from him was
Oh,
his mind.
Anne Frank? Is that the
No, it wasn't even think it was a gentleman. Was it Victor?
Victor? Yes, I do. Now I know
Is
what
that
you're talking about. Yes.
familiar? Yeah.
Just a second, but yes, we can choose our attitude and how we approach something like they can never take our joy, our attitude, or something away from us. So
Yeah.
he approached it completely different, where others
Mhm.
were succumbing to the
Yeah.
pressure. He was able to get through it with hope and just different things. But
Yes.
sure, yeah, I'll think of it just a second.
Yeah.
You're right about that. I know when I had a stroke and you had to go in to see the neuro. This was
Mhm.
right after my left side's gone, and I'm wheeling in, and the lady goes, the neuro said, like they would always say, like, "How are you doing?" Because
Mhm.
a big trauma.
Yeah.
And I just said, "I'm doing great." And then she leaned in and she said, "No, no, how are you doing?" And
Mhm.
I said, "If you knew my past and there was perspective, you would know why this isn't that big of a deal." I've and I said, I know it's just a thing I'm going through, and it'll be, a process.
Yeah.
But, life does teach you a lot of things. So when you're stronger as you go through each of these things, so every single time, it's almost like building on top of each other.
Yeah.
Something earlier, and I wanted to just go back to it in just a second because I've worked with seniors and senior community, and they're big servants, the home givers, and
Mhm.
I did notice this, they're always pouring out, but they're not taking
Mm.
care of themselves. And
Yeah.
you said something similar to that is like, we, if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't
Mhm.
really, but we're so driven by service and helping
Mhm.
that we look at others first before we look at ourselves. Do you find in your work that you will come across that people serve so much they forget about themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. But what the most amazing thing is that the more that you take care of yourself, the better you can serve other people. And sometimes we forget that. And so we give until we're depleted,
Yes.
then we don't accept help
Yes.
or we don't accept, monetary gifts, whatever it is. And then we wonder why we're tired and exhausted. But when you actually, because then too, it changes everything about yourself, right? So when you take that time, like you have a really beautiful morning routine that you do, right? Which is just so important. That's, you
Mhm.
know, I have a morning routine as well. And I make sure that I have that time for myself because I ground myself within my own energy before I even start interacting with the world, right? So when you do something in some way, and it doesn't have to be a ton, and the more often that you do it, I think the more often you'll realize you don't have to have like many hours a day, right, of just dedicated to yourself. Like at this point, I'm like, even if I just get, 5 minutes where I can just sit and do some either visualization or mindset or just get a chance to go outside, whatever, I can feel refreshed so much faster now when before, when I was so depleted and exhausted, it would take me days to recover, and I would need a lot more of that, like, time to try to get back to it, but after you start doing that and you get into a rhythm of it, you don't have to have days. You can, replenish yourself much more quickly, and then you can continue doing what you're doing. But yes, I see it quite often, and maybe it's just the people that I attract to me because they're like, this is where I was, right? I was giving till I had nothing left to give and never accepting anything in return. So,
Yeah, I even thought about getting a tattoo with PT on it after my
oh,
experience because
yes.
it was just they're so wonderful how they give and and
Mhm,
impact they make on your journey. What
mhm.
when you were in physical therapy moving to what you're doing now, like, what tell us a little bit about that. Like, how did you get exposed to something else because you're trained as a physical therapist, you're
Yeah.
in that industry, that's a
Mhm.
servant industry, you're serving all the time, but it is draining because I know my
It
physics.
is
It's
draining.
like so what was it like when you made that transition?
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting. I had already even since we had kids, because then, the struggle of like, okay, childcare and still working and all of the things. So
Mhm.
there were several years of like trying to figure that out. And during that time, I kept trying to search. I was like, okay, what is something that I can do that's more flexible from home that I could maybe not have to be out of the house as many hours or whatever. So I went into lots of different endeavors. Nothing felt right. It didn't really stick.
Mhm.
And I was in one of those said endeavors when one of the people introduced me to a video of Bob Proctor, and I had never heard of him before, but I was like, okay, I'll give this a listen. So I listened to it and something started to click because I've always been like a personal development junkie. I just love learning about this kind of stuff. And it always fascinated me. And then when I heard Bob, it was like all these pieces started to come together, and I was starting to understand it on a very different level. So I went into like a deep dive of listening to him for 2 solid weeks. And then I was like, this is what I need to do. And I didn't waste any time. I just jumped right in. It's like, I found it. Like, this is what I'm doing. So in the beginning, I tried to do both for a while. I was still seeing some patients and then also working on the business. And there was a point where I was like, no, I have to make the leap, which it can be really hard, especially when you come from a profession where you had put so much into it, right?
Yeah.
I spent 15 years doing that. I spent 7 years in school for it and a lot of money. So I was like, can I completely step away from this? And so it took a little bit, but I just knew I had to do it. So in a nutshell, that's how I ended up in this. And I just can't, I love it so much, like I said before, and it's just a joy. It's so much more fulfilling because there was always this part in working with patients where I could see it, right? Like I could see these other limitations that they're putting on themselves. And like the people who come in who are like you, Pete, who are, motivated and their perspective is totally different, and see how much more quickly they recover and the outcomes they got were so much different versus other people who were like, I am my diagnosis. And so they were. And so they didn't recover and they didn't change and they didn't grow. And, just knowing there was so much more to what was happening with my patients, but I was limited in what I could do, but now I'm like, okay, well, now we get to address the roots of so many different things. So it's just beautiful.
That is so good. You said personal development junkie. I love
Yes.
that word. I love it because I would consider myself a personal development junkie.
Mhm.
My girls didn't exactly think, 'cause I was in the early, like 10, 15 years ago, we had a satellite dish that brought in personal development. And I'd kind of like my homeschooling method. Okay, we got to sit down and watch this. And it
Oh,
was like, they still give me a hard time about it. So when it comes to personal development, what could you share with our viewers? How has that made a difference in your life? And at what point did you kind of think you were a personal development or personal growth junkie?
that's a good question. Actually, I think the point I started to realize it when I had gone back home. I'm from Illinois, and I went back home for a visit, and I was having lunch with my friend, my oldest friend,
Mhm.
and I was telling her about the books that I was reading, and she's like, "Do you ever read fiction?" And I was like, "No, I don't." She's like,
Same here.
"It's
Oh
just
yeah.
so hard. Like, you should give yourself a break." And I'm like, "But I don't want a break. Like, I love this." So,
Oh my gosh. I had a same conversation with somebody and they said, she even sent me a book, like, and she said, have you read it? I said, no, and I don't plan on it. So, but go
I
ahead.
know. I'm like, "I'm sure it's lovely. It's just that it's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
what I do."
Can't get in. I like the strategy, the idea of improving. And I think
Mhm.
sometimes when people haven't been exposed to it, it's
Yeah.
like they don't know how wonderful it can be because
Yes,
we're born to grow. When you
absolutely.
stop growing, what is it? The apple falls off the tree and then it's rotten after
Yeah.
that.
Mhm.
We take showers, but we don't take mental showers. And
Oh, great visual.
really
Mhm.
help us get this thing right. What
Yes.
would you say? Why do you think, in your estimation, you have some people in that camp that have never really experienced it?
Yeah.
What do you think it is? And just like with your girlfriend, you're sitting down, you're talking, and and she's looking at you like you have three eyes, and you're you're wondering why she doesn't like But why do you think? I mean, is it just we're all different and we never been exposed to it? What's your thoughts on that?
Gosh, it's a very good question. And I do think absolutely we are all different and we're all driven by different things. And some people can be very satisfied with like the monotony of life. And they're like, well, this is just the way that it is. And they never seek to make a change. Now, I've always been like,
Mm,
if somebody comes to me and they're like, I don't like my situation, then I'm like, do something about it. Right. I have never been the person who's like, I will sit in something I don't like because I don't want to try to make a change. Right.
mm,
Like, and so whenever I would talk to people, and I realize they don't always like my advice either. So I'm like, well, if you don't like it, then change it. And they're like, oh, but I just can't. And they don't see a way, right? So, yes, I think it is exposure. It is like knowing that there's something different is possible. And, taking people off of their pedestal and realizing that if you look at somebody else's lifestyle and you're like, oh, I love their lifestyle. And it's like, well, that's available for you too. And they're like, no, it's not. And they're like, oh, but it is. But it is available for you. And so just understanding that all this possibility is out there. And I think some people just don't have that realizations depending on, what kind of environment that they were raised in and that they're constantly in and around and the type of people that they're always talking to. When you then throw somebody in the mix at you that's like, okay, we'll make a change, like do something about it and grow and live the life you actually want instead of what you are, settling for. And so they might not necessarily agree.
mm.
But
Really good. Yeah,
but
that's a
yes.
great perspective. I love that.
Yeah,
I want to be respectful of your time, Jenny. So
absolutely.
tell our viewers, like, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, you know what? That is a beautiful question right now because we are in the process of creating our new website. But probably on the LinkedIn is the easiest and most stable. So it's just Jenny Jonte on LinkedIn, and you can find me there. And then all of the new updates as they're being unrolled will be presented there. So
Oh, that's so awesome. I could geek out with you all day long. I
I
don't
am loving this conversation.
know. It's so when you have something, I love when somebody has that perspective like you
Mm,
shared with our audience. And I want to encourage them to share this with people they know who need to hear from Jenny and need to hear a perspective that
yeah,
really it can be very, very beneficial if we lean into personal growth. So thank you so much for sharing.
absolutely.
What would be the one thing you would want our viewers to take home from this time on the podcast?
Hmm. I think it's to just believe in what's possible and to not limit yourself. So if I had to one little nutshell, that's what I would
Mm,
say.
that is beautiful. Jenny, thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule to be with us. I really appreciate you sharing with our community your thoughts and your journey. And I appreciate you very much. Thanks so much.
Thank you.